Hey everybody, this is Jaster with KOR Live. Hope everybody's doing well. Just a little quick message before we get into tonight's regularly scheduled programming. First off, I'd like to apologize for the lateness in updating the YouTube channel. This time of year is really busy with my work. I'm a food trailer operator and part owner, and I also help my friend run his small business as well. So we got a lot going on in there trying to make that bag. And we appreciate everybody that's got the patience to stay around while we're continuing to work through this whole thing. With that being said, we got a brand new, fresh episode on the YouTube coming to you tonight, but you can catch every one of our latest episodes on Spotify. We'll have the links in the description to that and all of our socials. Hope y'all have a wonderful day, and like always, thank you guys for listening. Y'all have a great time. Let's get into it. All right.
You just said you wouldn't do it, Devin.
See,
okay, well that time Jaster was definitely off.
No, I did. I did it on time. What I'm saying.
So what was that? The noise I heard after?
I don't know. A third clap.
I heard a third clap.
Which means it was Devin.
It was Devin. quit fucking gaslighting us, you asshole.
Yep, okay. Alright.
Alright. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That is.
Okay.
Fuck, sorry.
Alright, let's do this again. Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you live from Fallujah, it is the KOR Live Podcast. Except it's the After Hours, Part 3. Of our Bigfoot Iceberg project that we got going on for you guys today. You know, we started this whole thing in Season 1, now we're into Season 2, so we did it a little bit different with the intro this time, y'all. Hope y'all are having a great day. With us today, we got Kazari. How are you doing, bud?
I'm here as always, and not recording, but sitting in the booth with us is Devin, acting as our producer. We just went through a fucking
rigmarole, bro.
We just blundered our way for like 5 minutes of going, wait, how do we do this again? Wait, are we recording right? Are we synced? And,
we just got done with recording an actual episode, so that's the worst part.
That's the worst part. So it's like we should be back in the swing of things, but we're not. We're not. But you know what?
We'll get there.
If it ain't scuffed, it ain't core live.
Yeah, baby.
So
we're your podcast down on the river. And this time we're getting back into one of our French topics. Like we said, this is part 3 of the Bigfoot Iceberg that we have created for y'all. Because like we said before, whenever we went to go look and see if there was a Bigfoot iceberg, the one that we found was lacking. So we're on it. We got links provided. We'll post an image of our own iceberg here. If you like it, go ahead and pass it on around to your other Bigfoot friends. Well, hopefully not Bigfoot friends, but Bigfoot researcher friends. You know what I mean? If you got Bigfoot, if you got a fellow Squatch friend, you need to call me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so, absolutely. We want to go smoke up with them.
That'd be hilarious. But
all right, so this episode we are covering our 5th and 6th tiers, which are the distant visual sighting, aka the blob squatch, and being paralleled on a trail in the woods. And hey, let's start with a blob squatch. So a blob squatch is a colloquial term used by some squatchers to refer to alleged photos of Bigfoot that are impossible to make out.
Absolutely impossible.
It could just be a shadow that somebody interpreted as a Sasquatch, or maybe it is an actual Sasquatch, but the photo is so blurry or JPEG'd or whatever that we can't make out any detail. These are usually the kind of photos and footage that just get tossed out, right? Because there's nothing that can really be gained from them because, well, you can't make heads or tail of them. There's no point. So.
And like people always want to be like, no, you see that? You see what I see in there? And it's like, I think I see what you see. Like
maybe if you put a red circle around it, maybe.
So, let's go ahead and get into probably one of the most legendary of all Bigfoot topics. Okay, this is
in terms of like pieces of evidence for sure,
and people surrounding the topic. Because I'm going to kind of lump in the guy along with what his contribution was, if that
All right,
if
go
that
ahead.
works.
Go ahead.
So,
This is a twofer. Go for it.
all right, so I want to introduce everybody to a little-known Bigfoot researcher named Ron Moorhead, who, up until the Sierra Sounds tape came out, was just one of those regular old boys in the woods. Him and his friends would go out to this long-range mountain camp way out in the mountains. Like, I think they said it was like a 14-mile trek from the nearest trail. Like, they're out there. Like, they have to literally pack mules to get out to this camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, over time, he gets invited to this camp with his buddies, and they are out there. It's a couple days or whatever, and at night, they start to hear chattering, okay? But it's not chattering like humans talking back and forth to each other. It's just one of those things you just gotta hear the audio. And, like,
it's genuinely unsettling.
Unsettling.
There's everything from your typical Sasquatch calls, but really the main reason this recording is so famous is because there's a lot of sounds in there that sound really damn close to human speech.
And linguistics actually analyze the Sierra Sounds and can confirm that they are using the same language structure. So, like, whatever the speakers are in this video, they are speaking the same language, and they are speaking a language, which is insane. Because a lot of people like to think, you know, Bigfoot's a big monkey in the woods, just likes to go howl or go break a tree or something. And there's a lot of evidence to the contrary. And, like, that's where a lot of the Bigfoot is a hominid argument starts to come from, because there's not a lot of apes out there that know how to make languages.
Yep.
So, it's a really wild video. I recommend anybody who goes into this topic to at least listen to it one time. It is legitimately one of the most unsettling things you can hear. And, like, I personally wouldn't recommend listening to it at nighttime, especially if you live out in the woods. It's one of those things.
Yeah.
It's just unsettling.
Listen, I'm a person with a pretty good constitution when it comes to getting scared. Usually when I'm watching horror movies, I can laugh my way through them, whatever. You know, I don't listen to true crime and suddenly get paranoid that every stranger I meet wants to murder me, you know. But the Sierra Sounds, they cause a primal fear in me I can't understand. It's an anxiety that I can't explain. It's genuinely, like, messed up. So if you're gonna go listen to this, you know, go listen to this and then watch, like, some mountain monsters afterwards to decompress.
Yes. Yes.
I fucking love. Yeah. No, Devin just said he loves mountain monsters, and I agree. That show's so fucking stupid, but it's great. It's so dumb.
So, do you want me to get into the next one? Because I think I was.
Yeah, this one's one you're more well aware of, and I'm so. The next one is the National Park Service conspiracy. I'm saying this for my recording, just in case I gotta go back and figure out where we were next time we record.
Absolutely. So, like the title represents, there's a lot of people out there that are like, why haven't we found a Bigfoot? Why don't we have a body? Why haven't the government acknowledged all this kind of stuff? And I thought a lot about that, quite a lot, over the years while I was perusing this topic and really getting my mind wrapped around the whole phenomenon. And I came across an interview on Sasquatch Chronicles, which shout out to Sasquatch Chronicles. Love them, hate them. We love you. You do a lot of work for the community. One of the people up there was apparently somebody in the National Park Service and came out with a very good line of reasoning, okay? I wouldn't even, like, yeah, it's obviously a conspiracy if the Bureau of Land Management or the National Park Service or the DNR are, like, actively covering up evidence and making people not talk about this, which is kind of where the conspiracy part of it comes in. But the main topic is that the National Park Service, which I don't know if everybody knows, is a huge amount of our government's taxable income every year. It's like a multi-billion-dollar tourist industry, okay? So the National Park Service conspiracy essentially states that the biggest reason why Bigfoot has not been acknowledged by any major players in the government or any major players in the economy is because they know straight up a suburban mom is not going to take her kids to Stone Mountain, Georgia if they think there's a Squatch out there. And if you get a lot of the people in the suburbs to stop going out to the national parks in the summertime, you're starting to curb a shit ton of the business the National Park Service accrues. Now, I personally, the cynic in me, this makes a lot of sense to me anyway, because, like, let's be honest, the only thing that the government really truly cares about is its money, right? And I could immediately see somebody up in the upper management of the National Park Service reasonably state, hey, if this thing's real, let's not tell anybody because we're going to lose all of our fucking money. Do you want a job next year? Then shut up. You know, like, to me that makes a fair amount of sense. And there's a couple of other interviews that get put out, mostly focusing around the big thicket research teams and their run-ins with the National Park Service and the Bureau of Land Management, that kind of backs up this whole conspiracy where they know something's out there. They know what it is. They've got trackers, like they got things tracking the movements of these creatures, but they don't want they don't want normal man to go out there, because A, suburban moms aren't going to go take their kids out to Smoky Mountains National Park no more, and then B, all of the squatchers are going to start going crazy, because, like, the other part of it is, like, say you're a person like me and Kaz and we believe, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we got them all in the national parks. How many people are you think are just going to go out there wandering around in the wilderness trying to find these things now? It's going to be a double whammy.
And then that's going to be a big liability, because then that's going to lead to people wandering too far, getting lost,
and there's
dying.
Already a huge issue with missing people in national parks. That's a whole other part of this conspiracy.
Yeah, that would just completely exacerbate it, 100%.
Exactly.
And we've kind of discussed this in prior parts, but also things like the logging industry and other things would also take a massive hit from the government acknowledging it. So that's why a lot of people are of the belief that this is definitely, like, known, but it's being kept under lock and key. I mean, for Pete's sake, recently we just got official government acknowledgement that they're aware of UFOs and keep records on them. So, you know, it's not too much of a stretch to say the same thing about Sasquatch. The only difference is they haven't come out and said it yet, because there's no public pressure on them. So
it's a part of it. Like, if you get the society to believe that people that believe in Sasquatch are nuts, then they have no real reason to even acknowledge the situation.
But see, that's what's funny about it, is believing in Bigfoot has become socially acceptable.
Yeah, you might get a chuckle, but you won't get nearly the pressure that you used to get 10 years ago.
Like, it's not going to ruin your job. Except unless you're in, pretty much at this point, the only places that will ruin your job is, like, your, police, military.
And even then, not even police anymore. You know, the amount of police that have came out in the last 2 years is insane. Like, I would relegate that to almost like a upper management law enforcement or even a government position. Because they're, like, I even heard of in a recent interview off of Sasquatch Theory that has the Idaho Department of Natural Resources acknowledge this, where they had a group of, like, basically just interns working for them and doing surveys on the water around the national park they were in, and they got sent far back in there to go and find the mouth of the main river, and they had an encounter. And the main guy that was over the interns was a real jovial fellow. The guy always cracked up. Everybody loved him. He was a real easygoing guy. And then when they told him about it, he goes, yeah, every couple so years, one of the teams, they see him. And then he gets real super serious and goes, and if you say a word of this, you will be terminated as a state employee. Do you understand? And then he gets right back onto the conversation.
Sounds about right.
And what gets me is, like, if it was just a couple of people from the government that says that this is the case, I would be like, okay, maybe they're making some shit up. But there's, like, dozens,
it's pretty consistently,
dozens of consistent reports of the same behavior. Which, I mean, if you look at anything else the government does, they're pretty they're pretty similar in their execution of protocol when it comes to don't talk about shit, pretty much
Yep.
from top to bottom.
So there you go. That's the National Park Service conspiracy.
I'll
Speaking of
let you
national
go ahead
parks,
and go in on the next one.
here's the Skookum Cast. So this is actually going to be the first time we're going to mention this region. It's not going to be the last time. Actually, well, no, because we talked about Sasquatch Canyon, and that's in the same general geographic area, I
believe so.
Yeah, because
believe
let's see,
it
that's
is.
up Sasquatch Canyon. That's up on our or Ape Canyon rather. That's up on one of our earlier tiers, I want to say.
I think it's like, in one of the first two. Yeah, it's the Ape Canyon incident in Tier 2.
The Ape Canyon right there. Yep, tier 2. Yeah, so we're heading back into the mountain range up in Washington again. This actually took place somewhere around the foot of Mount St. Helens. Basically, a survey team went out looking for Squatch. They put some, I think it was like apples or something in some mud, and they left. And something came around and ate the apples and rolled around in it, and they took a cast of it. And for the longest time, it was bandied about as being a Sasquatch, but some experts have taken a look at it, and these are people within the community, and it's been determined it was either a bear or a moose, which is disappointing, but not surprising.
Right, because like I would say a moose is very capable of the same height feats that a Sasquatch could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and those things are huge.
And it's worth noting they didn't have any equipment recording the site or anything like that. They literally just left the bait there and then left for a couple hours and then came back like either later that day or the next day, and they had their cast. So it's kind of an example of kind of the gung-ho, air quotes, science that some people practice here, and why some people need to be more careful about their observations that we make.
Yeah.
So
just because you think it's Bigfoot don't mean it's Bigfoot.
Mm-hmm. Don't let your confirmation bias get the better of you, folks.
It'll happen to the best of us for sure.
Yep. So
I guess.
Well, I'll let you take this next one.
All right. So next up, we got the Gigantopithecus theory, which is probably one of the, I would call it the three big theories on Bigfoot.
Yeah,
I'd say the hominid theory, the great ape theory, and the Gigantopithecus theory are probably the three big ones that you're going to hear. Mm-hmm. And this one, just like its namesake, comes from the Gigantopithecus creature that we known to have walked the earth thousands and thousands of years ago in China. Which, if you don't know about it, it's essentially an orangutan on fucking steroids.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like Hulk Hogan steroids. I'm talking like anime steroids. This thing's a legitimate thing that could be a Bigfoot if you looked at it.
It is a very distant ancestor of the modern-day orangutan from about 2 million to 350,000 years ago during the early to middle Pleistocene period. Its full name is Gigantopithecus blacki. There have been potential identifications for species in Thailand, Vietnam, and Indonesia as well. And basically the theory is, hey, there's some that stuck around till modern day.
Which is there's some issues with this theory that I'll get into. So, like, the biggest issue is that, like, we've never actually gotten a full Gigantopithecus, skeleton, ever.
Most of what we have is jaw structures, and
yes,
that's really about it.
And it's interesting because of the way that they figured out the thing was existing, was these archaeologists would go through black markets in China and look for what they would call dragon bones. And they were used as euphorics, all this other kind of stuff to help your libido, you know what I mean? Kind of one of those things. So this guy what he saw was, quote-unquote, a dragon bone or a dragon's tooth that looked like a hell of a lot like a gorilla's molar, but like 4 times the size or something like that, right? So he bought it and he brought it back, and it turned out to be a brand new species of ape. From, I think, the issue of it, really, and sorry, I kind of hopped a little bit, is that Gigantopithecus, we have no evidence of it existing anywhere later than 10,000 years ago, at best. Mm-hmm. And it's really one of those things where there's only a few bones that you can actually find, and like the rest of them have no doubt been excavated and brought out and sold on the black market as something they're not, you know. So we might never get an actual Gigantopithecus skeleton, you know what I mean, just due to how rabid that industry is over there. But the other main part of it, and this is something that I don't know if you know this, Kaz, is that Gigantopithecus was an herbivore, like a strict
Yes.
herbivore.
I am very aware with this. Yeah, no, I'm all right on the topic.
And like the main reason why people think that this is like a crap theory is because that the not only do we have a ton of eyewitness reports and everything else that these things take dogs. They don't like dogs. They will steal cats. They like to do all kinds of shit to livestock that I can't really say here on even a viewer discretion is advised kind of channel.
Lots of graphic virus.
Yeah, there's
violence,
a lot of
yeah.
stuff going on. It does not sound like this thing is an herbivore, you know? And not only that, but the amount of just straight up leafage that a Gigantopithecus would need to survive doesn't actually exist anywhere on the planet at this present point in time.
Yep. So
like, I don't see that being the case. I do like the idea. Maybe, I think, my theory, we might get into it later, depends. Maybe we'll round it out with what we think all this is at the very end of the iceberg. But I think they got a good... I think it leans itself into another theory of divergent evolution. Or just...
maybe.
even getting
Whatever
into
the
a
case,
new species.
Whatever the case is, we've come to know more about Sasquatch. The Gigantopithecus theory has fallen out of favor, and it isn't really bandied about that often by squatchers in the community anymore.
I think it was at its height in Monster Quest times.
The early 2000s, yeah, because there was one particular scientist who was pushing it, and he died around 2002, and it didn't have much legs after that. So there you go. So next on the iceberg is tree structures. We've already talked about bent trees, but now we're going to talk about tree structures. And tree structures is kind of a broad blanket term because really it can refer to any number of things. It can refer to a unusually high amount of overturned trees in an area. We're talking about like almost like systemically knocked over to make traversal difficult. It could be just a teepee made out of trees. It could be a low-hanging branch. Yeah, it could be a lean-to. It could be a branch that's just had a lot of foliage tossed onto it. Basically, out-of-place structures made out of trees or branches or whatever that have no natural explanation for them whatsoever.
I think there's one weird one. You want me to bring it up that I like? It's really really cool.
Go ahead.
So like, sometimes when people go in, they see these structures. They'll even find themselves in the middle of what they call a run chute. Okay, where two huge trees has been knocked over and pushed over to create a bottleneck. Okay, so this is something that we use whenever we're hunting like bison or large herd animals. We'll use groups. So one group of hunters will be sweeping while the other group is sitting in an ambush point, and they'll sweep the animals into these chutes where they have to go this way. They know that they're going this way, and that way the hunters waiting in ambush have a much better chance of getting a kill. So out in the middle of absolute nowhere are these trees that get knocked over to make perfect bottleneck chutes. Like in Sasquatch areas, like these things are using these chutes to corral deer and other prey items for other creatures laying in wait to take advantage of it. And I've seen multiple videos where these people are like videoing around, they see the teepees, they keep walking and it's all chill and it's all good, and then they look around, they see that they're in the middle of this chute and the woods is dead quiet. And they're like, we need to move. Whatever it is leading us into something.
Yeah, it's so there you go. Tree structures, whether they be habitats or shoots or whatever you got, that's just generally what that means. So Jaster, tell me about Asabe.
Alright, so like this gets into the foo-foo territory.
Yeah,
okay?
We were kind of making fun of these guys in the last episode. This is related to our damn flute player squatchers.
Yes, so this is like a whole other level, okay? If you think flute playing like Sasquatchers are crazy, well, guess what? They turned hippie. Okay, so this is like a relatively new term, at least to my understanding, and I mean like within the last couple of years. So,
I never
like,
heard of it until you suggested it for the iceberg.
yes, so there seems to be a new thing in the foo-foo category. Now, like, when I say this, this is like, these are the people that when you hear them talk about it, it's like, oh wow, y'all are on something. You know what I mean? They refer to them as the Sabe, like to elevate them to a tribe of peoples equidistant to us from the Native Americans. Basically, they're like trying to like make Sasquatch sound like a legitimately intelligent society, almost like a tribe of people. And when these people talk about them in this regard, they use the term Sabe as a almost like a pseudo angelic guardian of the woods kind of thing.
I have to say, I think it's really funny that the term is borrowed from like, I don't remember which Native American language, whatever the phrase Kimosabe came from, which, good job, yeah, the continuing the white legacy of, exploiting, indigenous cultures. Bravo, you're totally making us look legit here. Great job, A+. You're definitely not making us look like a bunch of, tree-hugging, bark-smoking loons.
Right.
Fucking morons.
And now, here's the fun part, is like, I only really see this kind of, like, I don't get into a lot of, like, the flute player community too much. Like, once I start realizing that like, a YouTuber's, like, that far down, or, like, one of the other speakers on a podcast is that far down the rabbit hole, I tend to pull away. But there's a really good channel out there who, he plays the middle of the road very well, and it's Dixie Cryptid. And
love Dixie Cryptid.
Shout out to Cam, okay? He does great work out there. And the big part about his channel is that he just reads the stories sent into him, and his podcast is What If It's True? Like, he acknowledges the fact that a lot of people sending in him shit might be full of shit, And he doesn't like to read the upteen million emails he gets about a grandma who's got one living in their trash can. Like,
yep.
He gets all of them. But he was one of the first people on a platform to really start to bring the term outside of those communities and start to really kind of get that out there. Now, like, I don't know if somebody had sent that in or if he had heard that from somewhere or whatever, but like, he's got a couple of stories where the writer for the story kind of brings that up, and I guess he's on the same opinion as us, because he ended up bringing that term into one of his extra projects called the Steve Lilly Journals, where he's writing a series on Bigfoot hunters, and it's a fictional series, but he brings in the term there, and the people that use it are just straight up Bigfoot scammers. Like, they're the ones doing the fake expeditions. They're the ones out there fooling people and scamming people. And they're the ones in his story really pulling that term out there. Everybody else just kind of feels like it's crap. Which kind of, to me, kind of signifies maybe his opinion on the term itself.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But
it's very interesting. So, our last one on Tier 5 is the mid-tarsal break hypothesis. Now, if you've been listening to these, you probably already heard us discuss our man, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, and this is primarily his main theory that he puts forward. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, just to review, is a full professor of anatomy and anthropology, and specifically at Idaho State University.
And he's an expert on primate locomotion.
Yes, and foot morphology in particular. And we've discussed before, but he is in a interesting gray zone in Sasquatch research, because he is in a legitimate PhD, bachelor, and master's degree holder of, yes. Like, he holds multiple degrees, and he's applying his education to Sasquatch research, which automatically puts him on the fringe of, academia. However, because of the inherent Squatcher distrust of, what's the
of
term?
authority figures in the
Of
scientific
authority
community.
figures, exactly. He's also alienated from them, leaving him in this no man's land. But the thing is, his research is super important. He has gone out and gotten a lot of fantastic evidence, and we personally highly revere him.
Yes.
He put forward a hypothesis about the foot structure of Sasquatch, and I'm going to let you explain this, Jaster.
All right, so this one, it gets a little wild, and I can't remember what exact prints really got him to think about it. It might have been the Patty prints that they got. But more or less, everybody knows that Bigfoot moves way smooth for being a 7 to 1,200 pound hominid ape looking thing. You know what I mean? Like, every video you see of these things moving, it's not like they have the normal human gait where they're bobbing up and down. These things are moving at incredible speeds, like they're gliding, okay? And this has perplexed the community for a long time. It's like, are these things spirits or something? And he came out with this mid-tarsal break hypothesis, which all it really says is the reason why these things look like they can traverse land, and they're traversing land that is harder for us to traverse at greater speeds and with grace, is due to an evolutionary development in the foot of Bigfoot, where halfway down the foot, in between the ball of your heel and where the knuckles of your toes kind of start, there's a tertiary break in the foot where it can essentially fold without actually causing stress to the animal. And that ability to fold itself actually allows much better traversal over rough terrain than a standard foot of a hominid or a great ape would. And that's already saying something, because our feet are some of the best evolved when it comes to doing bipedal traversal over anything. Like, I don't know if y'all have seen this, but like, this came up in a Joe Rogan podcast, actually, where if you look at a human's foot, if that person has spent like 6 months out in the woods with no socks and shoes, or if you look at any Aboriginal foot, or any Native American's foot that doesn't wear shoes, anybody out there that's not wearing shoes, their feet actually start to regress back to quote-unquote natural human feet. Like us being in shoes is unnatural, right? So we get our feet morphed over time due to this, depending on if you wear good shoes or not or whatever. But a normal human's foot, the toes actually like splay out so much wider than what a normal quote-unquote societal human's foot is. Mm-hmm. Like, and our feet actually have the ability to grip weird surfaces and allowing us to traverse things like logs or up sides of creeks. Like, our toes are supposed to be able to do a lot of digging in to give us some actual traction, right? Mm-hmm. And so this would be in a advancement on that idea, where there's an extra break in the foot that allows for a transfer of energy into a different direction easier, or it would be able to absorb blows whenever they step down in a weird position a lot better. It allows for the animal not to roll their ankles as much, and it just performs a lot better in rough terrain. Now, what's crazy is that this theory, even though there's not
it's a hypothesis, because scientifically, they don't become theories until there's evidence to back them. So it's a hypothesis.
Well, I'm just using the theory thing like he thought about this, right? So in this hypothesis, a lot of people heard this and they're like, that actually makes a shit ton of sense. And there's actually evidence in certain prints, including the Patty one, that indicates a mid-tarsal break.
And to my knowledge, nobody's been able to come up with anything to refute this. So,
and that's the wild part.
That's which is interesting, because Sasquatch research is evolving all the time. We get new information about Sasquatch constantly from reports, people going on the field, stuff like that. We have a large breadth of knowledge about Sasquatch behavior and stuff like that, which we've kind of touched upon in our past parts. And the fact that this is still remaining even after all these years is kind of fascinating.
Absolutely. And like I said, there's, I think, maybe one person that's came up against him and tried to refute this hypothesis, and like it's just not one to leave its spot without a whole lot of evidence to refute it. Like right now, it's our best bet on the how of how Bigfoot moves.
Yep, pretty much.
So
That's
that'll
it
be
for
the end
tier
for
5.
this tier, isn't it?
Yep, that's the entirety of tier 5.
And we're making some good time, I think.
We are, yeah. So next up is tier 6, being paralleled on a trail in the woods. We named this tier after a behavior that's heard pretty often in Bigfoot reports. You will have a hiker heading down a trail through the woods or a mountain, and they will hear footsteps just off the trail beside them. And then as soon as they notice them, they stop. So they'll start walking again, and the footsteps will pick up again. And they'll stop, footprints will stop, and so on and so forth. This will often be accompanied by a sensation of being watched or stuff like this, and usually this happens until either 1, they exit the trail, or 2, they reach a certain point in the trail where just whatever's paralleling them isn't interested. We don't know why it happens, but people get paralleled on trails, so there you go.
And
all right,
it's
Jasper,
interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to let you open up this one. Explain the Canadian devil monkeys to me, please.
Okay, so this one's a relatively recent one to me because, like, this isn't a well-known part of really any cultural lore. This is really, really niche shit, okay? Y'all, back in a couple of tiers ago, we talked about the Valley of Headless Men, a.k.a. the Nahanni River Valley, right? Mm-hmm. This is a place where people regularly go missing, and when they find their bodies, they don't have no heads.
Yep.
And there's been reports of giant, like, and I mean giants, I mean mountain giants. I don't say Bigfoot. I'm talking like a report of a father-son group that the son got lost, and when he found his son, his head was being ripped off by a 15-foot tall humanoid with tusks, a mountain giant. Not even a Bigfoot, right? So that's one of the proposed cryptids for the Nahanni River Valley, but it's not the one that the Native Americans think is it, okay? The Canadian devil monkey, which has a pronunciation that I'm just not going to try and attempt in its native language.
Understandable.
Is another cryptid that they are much more scared of. And the evidence kind of points to this cryptid being the reason why the Nahanni people started moving out of the area. And these devil monkeys have been seen in Canada for almost as long as Bigfoot has in the specific part of area. Now, for people that know of the different types of Bigfoot, the Canadian devil monkey probably has more of a resemblance to a gugwe than it does any other type of subclassification of Bigfoot, where these things have tails, full blown, but they're also 5 and 6 feet tall, and they're very baboonish in nature, right? So like take an African baboon, slap a bonobo's tail on it, then juice this thing until it's like almost clocking at 7 feet tall, and you got a Canadian devil monkey, okay? Now, what interests me the most about this story is there have been tons of accounts of people going missing, and they know these things are in the area, right? So they'll send a hunting party out to try and find the hunter and put down whatever it is that made him go missing, right? Well, when they find these things, they tend to live in caves, similar to the I can't remember which exact Alaskan tribe had a war with the Bigfoot people up there, and they found that the cave that they had burnt out was real. They also live in caves, just like those. But also, there had been at least 2 to 3 reports of when they did find these troops of devil monkeys, they were using the decapitated heads of their victims as balls, like playing with them. Like the babies would be sitting there kicking them around and throwing them around to each other, cackling and laughing like it's a toy. And that's where the devil monkey parts of it come in. Because, like, not only are they seen semi-regularly in the area that the Valley of the Headless Men originate from, but also it's the only feasible time where they've explained that there's this cryptid out there, and it includes the head that was missing from the body. Like, where do the heads go? You know what I mean? Like,
Where
animal
did the heads
predation
go?
usually means that they're picking apart the carcass and they're leaving it pretty much in the same 100-yard area that they killed it in, right? So in most predatory encounters, if you find the skull missing from the head, you're going to find the fragments or parts of it in the general area, and they just never have.
Yep.
But later, when they chase these troops of supposed devil monkeys down, they find the heads, and they're using them as toys.
There you go.
So, like, that's that. But the next one is probably one of the bigger topics that we're going to be covering today, and it's another double whammy, I believe, right?
Yeah, which one we pointing at?
The Mount St. Helens.
Yes, Mount St. Helens. So Mount St. Helens has been a hotspot of activity for forever. We just talked about the Skookum Cast. Ape Canyon is in the same mountain range. It's a well-known area that's part of kind of a corridor that goes through the northwest, and this seems to be kind of where it all centers around. There are all sorts of stories. There's a high amount of activity that happens in the areas around this mountain in particular, and I believe there are some stories from the eruption or something like that. Jess,
Yeah.
you got more information on that than I do. But basically, it's a big deal. Like, I remember, I read a young adult novel when I was in elementary school called The Boy Who Met Bigfoot, and the majority of the action in that novel took place on and around Mount St. Helens.
And
Pretty
so,
crazy. Even way back then, it's been present in the mind of squatchers. I want to know if the novel I read was fiction.
yeah, I would say that it's the epicenter of the Bigfoot culture. I would say it's like, it was definitely where a lot of the old time stories that got into the social sphere started, and even to this day, like, Patty was not too far away from Mount St. Helens when it comes geographically compared to all of the other ones, you know?
Yeah, no, Bluff Creek ain't that far away, no.
No, so it's definitely, in my opinion, the epicenter of the phenomenon being Mount St. Helens. Now, what Kaz was talking about was when Mount St. Helens exploded, there was some weird shit, okay? Some weird shit going on, because, as you know, people live there, right?
Yep.
It's not exactly a desolate wasteland. Like,
Yeah,
there's
there
plenty of mountain
are
men
still
out
some
there.
ruins of homes that you can find up on the mountainside that are just buried up their teeth in ash and soot.
Right. Now, that closed down, I believe it was on the south side of the mountain, right? Was when is like how Mount St. Helens kind of fell.
I'm not familiar with the eruption, so dude.
I don't know what direction it was in particularly, but what I do know is that the opposite side of that mountain, a lot of strange things started to happen in the coming weeks and months after the eruption. There were plenty of reports of carcasses being found by mountain men out there, and there were other reports of troops of Bigfoot leaving the area in force, fast. They were out of there, you know what I mean? I mean, the fucking world just started to end for them, you know what I mean? So they're gone, but that also means they don't care too much about how secretive they're being. So there were multiple reports of whole troops raiding farmers' area, like farmers' houses on the side of the mountain when they were going out hunting, just absolutely taking everything they can and running, seeing large groups of them. When I mean large groups, probably like 4 to 6 of them moving quick out of the area. There were plenty of reports like hours after, or I wouldn't say plenty, there were reports hours after the eruption from people on the other side of the mountain stating that there were quote-unquote bipedal moose running around. That's not, no moose I know is bipedal, you know?
Yeah, for real.
No, or even a two-legged bear running around, you know what I mean? Like, there was, to me that makes sense, because anytime a large ecological disaster occurs, the wildlife flies out of there in every direction, right?
Yes.
So Bigfoot being included. Like, if I was living up there and that shit happened, I'd be packing my kids up and running pretty quick too.
Yeah, so there you go. That's Mount St. Helens, and we put it this far down in particular because we were when talking about specific incidents around Mount St. Helens, those are more well known. But if we're talking about Mount St. Helens and its general relationship to Sasquatch, that's a bit more further down. So
Yes.
next up on the list, we have the Neanderthal theory. We know we've said there's 3 major theories, but there are other ones too, and this is one of the more minor ones. It's not that complicated. It's basically just the idea that Sasquatch may be a surviving ancestor of a previous species of Neanderthal that existed alongside early humans and has evolved parallel to us. That's really it.
Right. And while I think that there might be some depth to this conversation, specifically in the fear responses of humans that we have genetically kept with us that don't make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
Largely, I don't believe in the theory. Like, they were much more known for tool use than Bigfoot, so, like, how did they regress? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there is a lot of evidence that Homo sapiens were the ones that caused the Neanderthal extinction, because there was a turbulent time in human history where the two species were forcibly intermingling with each other.
Well, yeah, because basically
other
Homo
things like that.
sapiens began to outlive a lot of the other Neanderthal species, and what fewer remained, it's theorized, were assimilated into Homo sapiens through breeding. And eventually we got Homo sapiens
Both
sapiens.
species did not like each other at all.
So.
But the other big part that I find interesting is that Neanderthals allegedly were more of a nighttime species, where we were more of a daytime species.
Mm-hmm.
So, that being said, Bigfoot's more of a nighttime creature than a daytime creature. But that's about as far as the connection goes in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are Bigfoot sightings out there that do link to a more human-looking creature than the one seen in the Patterson-Gimlin film, but largely, I think that's more reminiscent of the hominid theory, in my opinion, than specifically the Neanderthal theory.
Yeah, so there you go.
So,
that's really all there is to say about that. It's not that deep. So, next one is Missing 411, and Jaster, you this one is your bread and butter, so I'll let you take it away.
Alright, so little known man named David Paulides, okay? I say that, but this dude is everywhere.
He really is.
He is, honestly, one of the more diligent people when it comes to not just missing people, but when it comes to cryptids. Because, like, little known fact about David Paulides is that 10 to 20 years before he founded the Missing Can-Am project with his son, they'd passed away, he wrote books and he had done research on I believe it was an Oregon Native American reservation, where he was talking to them and like, hey, I want to write a book about Bigfoot, I'm trying to do research on all this, and he spent a ton of time helping his relations with the Native Americans in that time, and they started to really talk to him about Bigfoot, right? And this part of the theory more leans into the connection between Bigfoot and Missing 411, because there's a large amount of the community out there that believes that the majority of missing peoples that disappear in national parks are due to Bigfoot or dogmen, which kind of makes a little more sense than I'd like to admit, because sometimes people just disappear out of fucking thin air. Mm-hmm. And, like, that kind of shit's either indicative of cryptids, supernatural, or alien activity.
Because, like, for every disappearance that actually can be explained away as, there was a murderer or kidnapper, which there are quite a few prominent cases in the national parks where that is the case. There are still a lot of unexplained missing peoples in the national parks. There really are people who just go there and then vanish off the face of the earth. It's extremely baffling, and David Paulides kind of tries to shed a light on that.
Now, he has never went on record ever saying that Bigfoot, dogmen, aliens are explicitly connected and responsible for the Missing 411 disappearance. Now, he has mentioned these in his movies, especially the first one, he goes into the theory that Bigfoot might be responsible for it, but even he's like, there's not much evidence. And the big thing about David Paulides is he's an ex-cop. And he's well known for every person he brings in as evidence to his journey. He has them signed affidavits. So it's he's meticulous about that.
Extremely.
So anything he does say, now there's been times where he's covered cases and he's left out parts of a police report here and there. To me, that's being human. You know, like, he's much more meticulous on average than pretty much anybody else in the space. And he's done an amazing job bringing to light missing people whose families don't know where the fuck they went, what happened to them, and he's one of the only people out there championing their cause day in and day out.
Mm-hmm. Now, I will say, David Paulides' material is not for the faint of heart. It is talking about a lot of missing and dead people. And he doesn't just talk about missing people. He also talks about things like large dog attacks, stuff like that, and it's really heart-wrenching stuff. So if you're not able to listen to that kind of stuff, I don't recommend reading his material. However, if you can handle the heavy nature of the topic and you're willing to get educated, check it out.
Absolutely. Now, I guess we can go into the next topic.
Yep.
You want me to cover that one?
I don't know why I'm yawning. I slept in a good bit today.
All right, me too.
Mm-hmm.
Devin our producer, just asked him to quit yawning. I guess we're not editing that out either.
It's ruining the recording.
My immersion, Kaz.
Yeah,
come on.
I know. The Umatilla Reservation recording. This is another piece of audio. This is actually our third piece of audio we've discussed on here, and it's the most recent and least prominent out of them. But Jaster and I still believe it's actually worth a listen. Jaster, why don't you go ahead and explain it for the good people at home?
All right, so the Umatilla Reservation recording, I believe, is out of the state of Utah. Okay, I could be wrong. I believe
that.
I believe it's out of that state. It's the Umatilla Reservation.
It's in Oregon.
Oregon, I'm sorry. So we're right back in Bigfoot activity area. Now, it's important to understand that Bigfoot is not located specifically in the Pacific Northwest. It is everywhere. We'll get into that later in the iceberg. But some of the best recordings we have of Bigfoot audio comes from that part of the world. Now, maybe the Ohio Howl might be in that tier, and it obviously comes from the state of Ohio, but the Umatilla Reservation sounds are eerie, okay? Because it's a guy who's outside of his trailer, and he's right on the side of the main road, and right across the road in the woods, he can hear this absolutely devilish cackling, and whatever it is, it does not sound human. It sounds human-like, but the volume, the way that they're laughing and everything, it's much more indicative of large monkeys, like a howler or like a baboon, like specifically something in that vein, cackling and sitting there having a jolly old time, okay? Except it's so loud, it's waking up the whole fucking reservation. And it's not even in the reservation, right? It's on the outskirts of it, and everybody's woke up. So, halfway through this video, this guy's over here listening to that, and he's like, it only sounds like it's like maybe 100 yards away at best. And his neighbor, I guess, got woke up, and I guess he had a 5 o'clock shift because he came out there with his shotgun and just unloading into the woods.
Yeah.
And he was like, fuck this. Mm-hmm. He's like, I'm getting some sleep, right? Mm-hmm. And so, like, after all those rounds pop off, these sounds change. And this is what really got me, was that whatever it was still laughing. It was laughing, and it almost started laughing at the dude, and it started sounding kind of mad, kind of pissed, but it still was sitting there laughing like it was toying around, like it knew it couldn't be hurt. You know what I mean? Or they didn't know where exactly it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which is very indicative of ape-like or human-like behavior. Now, the other thing, and we brought this up in the Bigfoot After Hours two-parter that precedes these episodes here, this is the closest recording that I know personally to my own experiences in the subject, where we had a group of things that were yipping like coyotes that were covering tens of miles in a matter of minutes, coming up to the house and just sitting here and yipping and going crazy. But here's the thing. Coyotes, when they communicate to each other, they don't literally go yip, 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 and like 12 of them going at the same time. They don't do it immediately back and forth to each other because it's a location call, right? So as they're running through the woods, they'll yip at each other every minute, maybe every 2 minutes, to make sure the pack is all still together, right? Mm-hmm. These things were literally blowing up like the Umatilla Reservation recordings.
Yeah.
And to this day, like when I first heard that, it sent chills down my spine and it shot me right back to those nights. And like, to me, it's probably the wildest recording of Bigfoot out there as far as straight vocalizations. Like, a lot of people put the Sierra Sounds up there. I acknowledge that sheerly on how famous they are, but when it comes to just how varying and wild the vocalizations can get, I think this is the main video you need to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
okay.
Our producer just asked us to spell it out. Yes, so Umatilla Reservation sounds. Should be pretty easy to find on YouTube.
Yeah, it'll be a dude sitting outside a porch on his trailer like at 2 o'clock in the morning and look like he just got woke up and kind of freaked out.
Yeah,
so
I will say this is not as unsettling as the Sierra Sound, so if you're easily spooked, you can listen to this one pretty easily and give it a listen. So.
Yeah, it freaked me out just because of its
proximity
kind of
how
it took you back to. Heard.
Yeah, but for me, I was just like, interesting. So.
Now, like, another thing is that, like, when I do bring up the fact that these animals were yipping, I don't mean they were making the yip call of a coyote. I mean, I was literally hearing the word yip. Like, that's what really unsettled
literally
me.
Like us going, yep, 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 yep.
Yes,
so, yeah.
That's exactly what I heard. And that's, like, another thing that, like, years later, I'm like, that's fucking weird. You know, because I'm like listening to yipping calls from coyotes and they don't sound like that at all, you know. But we can get into the next one, the Otter Man. You want to get into this one, Cass?
I actually don't know this one.
Ooh, okay. So I guess it's going to be a Jaster heavy.
This
recording.
One's yours, yeah.
Okay, so the Otter Man, also known as Kushtaka.
Oh, okay. Now that you're saying the name it goes by, yes, I'm familiar with this one. I'd never heard the colloquial term for it before. I've heard about Kushtaka before. Yeah, no. Okay, yes, I am familiar with this. Anyways, go ahead.
So, up in Alaska and in the northern Canadian peninsula, there are multiple tribes that refer to a creature known as the Otter Man, okay, in their native languages. And one of the languages just so happens to be Kushtaka, or like Kushtaka if you're an English-speaking American guy that likes cheeseburgers, right?
Right,
so,
yeah.
This thing is basically Bigfoot, okay? Because it has all the same mannerisms and everything. Now, the
only big difference is it loves to swim.
And I argue that's not a difference. And mainly due to the work of David Paulides and Missing 411. Because when you really start to dig into Bigfoot, one of the biggest things, if you really look at it, most Bigfoot activity happens around bodies of water.
Mm-hmm. This
or
is true.
Access points to bodies of water.
This is very true. There are also plenty of sightings that happen inside bogs and swamps. So.
Exactly. So the fact that there is a 2-foot tall, a 2-legged 10-foot tall otter man covered in hair that likes to swim between islands and eats people and shit, that sounds like Bigfoot to me. That don't exactly sound like a third party cryptid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So a lot of people in those areas, when they hear about us talking about Bigfoot, they're like, yeah, Kushtaka. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, to even them, that's the same creature. So, like, whenever you hear about the Otter Man in anybody, like, telling them about a scary story, or if they've got, like, a Bigfoot encounter way up north or something, and you hear something about an Otter Man, just know that that is pretty much the same term. It's just what they refer to them as up in the Canadian peninsula into Alaska. Now, I'll let you kind of handle this next one, even though it's my favorite personal Bigfoot photo of all time.
All right, so our last topic for the day, because we are doing 2 tiers per episode. Mine is the Beast of Seven Shoots, which is not as well known as some other photographs are, but it's still rather infamous in Squatch circles.
Mm-hmm. For a few reasons, I would argue.
One of the main reasons is because, well, one, the people who took the photograph of this creature were able to go back to the exact location, line their shot back up perfectly, and take a shot of it with somebody standing where it was to get a reference of how tall it was. And this thing was huge, easily.
Yeah.
Like,
easily
we're talking
double digits.
Yeah, no, it's unique because of that, because we don't often get photographs of, entities that are in that neighborhood. But what's also interesting about it is it seems to be holding something. Nobody's quite sure what it is, but everybody agrees it's a fresh kill or prey of some kind. It was in the middle of taking back somewhere to go feed on.
Yeah, in my opinion, it most closely resembles a dog.
Yeah, a lot of people say it's like a dog or like a fox or a rabbit or something like that.
But here's my argument: if this thing is at the very least, they were saying in order to be visible at all in that photo, he'd have to be 10.5 foot tall.
Yep.
To be visible, but like. This thing was visible, like half of its chest and up was visible. So this thing's probably closer to 12 foot tall, which is an absolutely insane number for any Bigfoot sighting. Like, that's getting into mountain giant territory.
Furthermore, the thing is that when the photograph was taken, is that the creature was not seen. It was only seen later upon review.
Yes.
So,
now, the other big part about it is that I argue this is the only photograph we have of a gugwe, not like a Patterson Gimlin Bigfoot, but you can very distinctly see the snout, the baboon-like facial structure of this creature.
It is widely agreed upon that this thing has a snout, which is very interesting because it's one of the only real details you can make out on this thing.
Yes, and like anything if you know anything about a gugwe, it's just as bad as a yowie, except it lives in America. And you do not want... I would rather... And this is going to make Kaz probably be like, wow, really? But I would rather be in an alleyway with a dog man than a gugwe. 100% of the time.
I mean, a dog man's less likely to attack you. So
so's a gugwe. Yeah. That's the other thing. The biggest difference between a gugwe and a standard squatch is its aggression. These things are not scared of you.
I mean, dogmen, they do bluff charges and stuff like that. It's very rare they actually attack people. That's why I'm saying, you'd be safer in an alleyway than dogman. It'd still be really fucking scary, but, at least you're not going to get your, disemboweled.
Yeah, these things are mean, aggressive, they look aggressive, and what it seems to be is let's put it this way, if a Bigfoot is to a gorilla, a gugwe is to a baboon, okay? And the big thing about gorillas is they know that they are the meanest thing running around, you know what I mean? Outside of a big cat, they're kind of a chill animal, you know what I mean? They're not gonna try and take you out immediately. Like the silverback of a gorilla troop likes to bluff charge way before it goes into actually attack. Now, baboons, when you fuck with a baboon, you're done. He's honey badger level up in this shit.
Yeah.
Baboons have crackhead willpower that gorillas don't, and this trait is mostly seen in gugwe encounters more so than in standard Bigfoot encounters, where these things are not trying to bluff charge, they're trying to get in your fucking house. They're beating the shit out of your walls, they're stealing your livestock, they're killing them, they're leaving gugwees are well known for taking your livestock and then putting the disembodied head back on the spot where it went missing. They are very territorial. They do not like people. They want to mess with you. And they're big, so they know they can mess with you. So like I said, if I had to put I've had to put a public service announcement. If you see a Bigfoot and it's got a baboon face, just start praying. Like, I don't know about running at that point. Just start praying. Like, maybe God will help you at that point. Now, let's see. Is that the end of the... Yeah, that looks like the end of our
Tier 6,
thing.
and that's it for this episode, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, we'd like to wrap it on up here by thanking all of y'all for coming in and listening to our dumb shit. You know what I mean?
Yep.
A lot of people believe this is foofy talk just to even bring it up. And we're very passionate about this kind of thing, mostly due to our own encounters in our lives. And if you guys, if you even find this entertaining for a minute, is good enough for us. Your likes, your thumbs ups really help small channels like us. Sharing it really helps. But most of all, thank you guys for watching and participating. And we hope y'all have a wonderful night from our friends here at the KOR. Okay? Now, if you like anything that you hear, you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow us on Spotify, where we have our own video game podcast. Like, I know we're doing this giant Bigfoot iceberg, and we've got a lot of video game references and culture in this iceberg, but we do want to stress we are a video game podcast first, where you can find deep dives on more nuanced gaming subjects that happen week to week, day to day in our normal lives. But once again, this is Jaster, thanking y'all for watching. Here with my man Kaz and our man in the back, Devin, on the beats. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Y'all have a wonderful night. Bye bye.
Bye.